Good morning, guys. On this fine Wednesday, June 2nd. Wow, time flies. If you haven't already done so, please let me know that you are here in the comments. Okay. So, today you're going to be, well, first of all, today is the last day I'm with you. And then there's a short break. Well, not a short break, a long break. It's like a 2-week break. And then I'm going to be back with you again for the rest of the last unit. We're going to start the last unit today. This unit is evolution. So I'm going to talk about whoa. Oops. Accidentally opened my own live stream. So a couple things to mention. As we go now into this other course, please keep in mind that this isn't like an extension of 2 weeks for everything that you haven't finished. That stuff needs to be completed promptly. Some people have contacted me about an extra day or an extra 2 days or whatever to finish stuff that they're working on. Cool, no problem. Let me know. Stick to your extension that you are suggesting for yourself. However, don't treat the time when you're in your other course as a 2-week extension, because it's highly problematic. First of all, you're going to be going into the last unit with work that you need to finish for the last unit, which doesn't make sense. So and there is no extension at the end of the course. Everything needs to be completed on the last day of the course. I need to come up with your marks. I need to be marking the stuff that's coming in on the last day, which is there's stuff due on the last day. And so we won't be extending stuff infinitely here at the end of the course. So I can already predict who is going to get themselves into trouble at the end of this course. We're already in a bad way with some folks, because you're going to want to take another week at the end of the course to finish everything that you need to finish. You're going to come back to me in 2 weeks and say, oh, I still got to finish this and this. You won't get it done, and you're not going to get this credit at the end of the course. Don't put yourself in that position. If you owe me something, you need to have communicated with me what your intentions are regarding an extension, okay? And it has to be a reasonable timeline. And then you need to stick to that timeline. So some people are getting already into a really bad situation. It's not a lot of people, but you know who you are if I'm talking to you. You're getting yourself into a bad situation where you're putting stuff off, and we're going to come to the end of the course, and you're going to have 3 things you need to finish. And then the course will be over. The end. And then you will not have this credit at the end. Okay? It has happened multiple times already this year. Please, if you owe me something and you haven't already made arrangements with me in terms of a deadline, you need to do that today. Okay? You need to make a reasonable deadline for yourself, and it can't be, I'll have it ready for you when we come back. Okay? That's not acceptable. I have another class that is with me during that time, and I will be marking their stuff. Your stuff is going to go to the bottom of the pile. Okay? And if I honestly, like, this is not on me to have to go back and mark something from a month ago on the last day of school. Okay? That's totally unfair to put that on me. I have to have your report cards done pretty much immediately when the course ends. There is a little bit of wiggle room there, but that is meant to support people that are really struggling, and it's probably not you. So anyway, it's just frustrating for me because I'm already starting to see things stack for people, and I know I'm going to get a dump on the last day of class of, here's my 5 things that I owe, as if I had, 24 straight hours ready to mark all the stuff that's going to fall on the last day, which I absolutely do not have. So Please, for yourself and for me, set yourself a reasonable timeline, communicate with me, and make sure you stick to that timeline. Okay, do not take these next 2 weeks as 2 weeks off of this course if you owe me something. It should be completed in the first couple days that you are away from me. All right, that being said, let's talk about what is going to come due on the last day of class. Okay, keeping in mind that there's only 3 days when you come back to me. I think. Let me double check that. I think it's 3 days. I'm almost positive. Yes, June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. On June 23rd, this course will be complete. Done. So, you need to make sure that you're handing stuff in at the deadline. For those of you that have been saying, okay, well, I need an extra day, I need an extra 2 days, the end of the course is the end of the course. So don't have things set up so that you will require an extension from the last day of the course. The course will end. So first thing to mention, there is a vocabulary list for the evolution unit, but it is smaller than the other units because this unit is smaller. You only need 20 words for this one as opposed to 30 for all the other units. Okay, so it is shorter. You only need 20 words for this evolution vocabulary list. Okay, 20 words, less. There is a major assignment, which I'm going to go through with you right now, but please notice that the assignment is labeled bonus assignment. What that means is that you do not have to do the last major assignment. It's a presentation about a topic in evolution. You do not have to do it. If you right now have a 95 in this course, my recommendation to you is don't do the last assignment. Then the next question that people always ask is, can my mark go down? Yes. If you do a poor job on the last assignment, I count it like a regular assignment. And if it makes your mark go down, then it makes your mark go down. So if you're not confident that you're going to put in a good effort on the last assignment, make sure that you're hitting all of the assignment expectations. Yeah, your mark can go down. So don't do it if you're not planning on really doing a good job on it. What this assignment is designed for are two things. One, you are interested in the topic of artificial selection and you want to learn more about it. Great. If you want to do this project as a enrichment activity, but you don't want it to affect your mark, but you still want to hand it in, cool. Just put that in the comments on the assignment when you hand it in. Don't mark enrichment activity. That's all you need to write on there. That's cool. I'll still mark it, like I'll still go through and give you feedback on it, but I won't put a mark on it at the end, and I won't have it count for or against your mark. Okay, that's if you're just interested in learning about that topic. I've never had anyone do that before, but you're welcome to do that if you're interested. Okay? If your mark is much lower than you would prefer it to be at this point, and I realize that you don't have a great picture of your final mark because I still owe you a number of assignments returned, which I'm working on, by the way. I will make sure, Kim, that you get that mark as you come into the last few days. So my issue here is that I'm not going into a black hole here for these 2 weeks. I have another class, and I also have assignments I still have to mark from the other class and stuff coming in late from my other class. So I have to balance all of the marking for all of these things together. So you will get that mark update going into the last 3 days. You'll know where your mark is at that point. That is 3 days before this assignment is due. Certainly plenty of time to do it if you're still interested. That being said, okay, so this is a bonus assignment. You don't have to do it. I don't recommend that you do it if you have a really good mark, because again, it could positively or negatively affect your mark. If you have a relatively poor mark and you want to improve it, then I do recommend that you do it, because it'll be a mark booster for you, assuming that you follow all of the guidelines that are in the instructions, which we'll go through together. Okay, so it could potentially boost your mark if your mark is lower than you want it to be. But the last thing I'll mention about this is it is due on the last day of class, which is let's just looking at it. June 23rd. It's due on June 23rd at midnight. The Dropbox disappears on June 23rd at midnight. In other words, there is no way to hand this assignment in late. It will not be taken late under any circumstances. Do not email me saying the Dropbox is gone, I need to hand this assignment in. It's gone. There is no way to hand it in after midnight on the last day. So keep that in mind. There are no extensions on this whatsoever. I have to have my marks in for your report cards, and I won't be taking these assignments as I'm writing my report cards. So there is a hard deadline at the end of this course. The same goes for the vocabulary list for this. Do not ask for an extension on the vocabulary list unless we have previously communicated about the fact that you are behind in the course and we're working on catching you up. Okay? If you're in that boat and you're working on that with me, then let's chat. But if you're caught up, you have no reason to get an extension on the last assignment. Okay? I'm sorry to be tough on this one. I'm really flexible about deadlines most of the time, but I cannot be flexible about this because I have to get everything marked for both of my classes, and I have to get the marks to the students, and I need to get comments written, and I need to get your report cards finished immediately after the course ends. Basically, I have like a day and a bit. And again, there are some opportunities for extension there into those instructional support days for students that have previously communicated with me that they're falling behind, and we have established a schedule for completion for assignments. Okay, so if you're in that boat, I don't want people to feel like it's hopeless. If you're starting to fall behind and you've worked out a schedule with me to get back on track again, that's fine. Okay, but other than that, if you're just not going to finish it on time, and I have got a number of emails of people saying, well, you know, I have this hockey practice, I'm just going to hand it in a day late. Again, under normal circumstances, I don't really care about that. That's not a huge deal to me. I understand that personal stuff gets in the way. But at the end of the course, I can't do that. I don't have the option to just extend that to everybody who's like, I got a hockey practice. I'm sorry that you have hockey practice. You must complete the assignments that are in the last unit by the last day at midnight. Okay? They have to be completed then. No exceptions. Again, unless you've previously communicated with me a plan. So, I just want to make this really clear to people because the end of the course is a real crazy time where many people feel like they're going to try and push the deadlines of this, especially because I've been flexible about deadlines so far this quad. They're going to try and push it into the final days. It isn't happening for you. So please make sure that you get those assignments in on time. Now, you really only have one major assignment and a quiz, so it's really not that big of a deal. You do need to write the quiz on the last day of class, which is, again, I think it's a Wednesday. So make sure that on the last day of class, you are writing the quiz. You have to write it. I mean, if you want marks for the quiz, you have to write it. So if you feel like you're not on track, if you feel like you got to communicate with me, let me know what's going on. But my expectation is that everything is completed on the last day of this course. Okay, I hope I made that abundantly clear. I'm usually good with deadline extensions, but the end of the course is the end of the course. I won't be hanging out after my report cards are done, furiously trying to mark somebody's extremely late assignment and then updating their mark in the, which by the way, I have to do one at a time by individually contacting the secretaries in the office and letting them know there is a last second change to this student's mark. I only do that under special circumstances, okay? I have to go out of my way in order to make that change for a student, and they hate it. They really hate it. They don't want to have to go back and redo work that they've already done, the secretaries. So I only do it under special circumstances. Please don't be that person, all right? Unless we've previously communicated a schedule of catching up, all right? Again, flexibility can be found if it's absolutely necessary, but if you're just have a hockey practice or something, please don't ask for an extension. It just isn't going to happen. All right. I'm going to stop talking about that now, but I just need to make it really clear because it happens at the end of every quad, and then I end up getting students that don't get the credit because of this. So, and I don't want that. So what is the last assignment? It is similar to the previous two. It is a presentation, 5 to 7 minutes, but this time you are going to discuss a incidence of artificial selection. So again, not all this is going to immediately make sense because obviously it's going to reference some of the course material, but I just want to throw what the project is out there early so people know what it is. So today we're going to spend some time talking about natural selection. The idea that the environment picks which organisms' traits are going to be the best for survival. So for example, you got a whole bunch of different animals living in a pond. In that case, the pond environment is going to say, well, it's not going to say, I'm giving it agency here, but what I mean is the environment is responsible for deciding which of the traits of those organisms are going to be helpful for survival. So if some of them have flippers, okay, I'm talking about variability within a species, and some of them don't. So some of them have webbed feet and some of them don't, just due to a random genetic mutation. Well, the ones with flippers, the ones with webbed feet, are more likely to survive than the ones that don't have webbed feet because they can just move faster, catch their prey easier, escape from predators faster in the water. And so nature is going to select those things, those traits, and they will survive and pass their genes on to their offspring, whereas the ones that don't have webbed feet are going to be less likely to pass their genes on to their offspring. And over time, you will see that this changes what the population looks like. There will be more of that trait in the population, more webbed feet, and less of the trait that doesn't have webbed feet. So what that change is called is evolution. That's the change in the frequency of that particular trait or allele in the population, a change in allelic frequency. Whereas the actual act of doing the selecting, in other words, the water, the aquatic environment is selecting which traits are better for survival. That's called natural selection. Okay? So natural selection is when the environment selects which traits are going to be the most advantageous based on what will allow an organism to better survive and reproduce. Okay? So that's natural selection. Artificial selection is when humans do that. So humans go and pick a population of wolves and say, okay, you 3 wolves are the friendliest. I will breed you. And then you look at the next generation and you say, which are the friendliest wolves in this generation? I'm going to breed you, etc., etc. Eventually you have a domesticated dog, which is what we have done. Okay? That's where dogs came from. So that process is called artificial selection. It's when humans do the selecting. So what this project is all about is comparing artificial selection and natural selection. So you're going to choose a area or an industry or an occasion where humans have done the selecting. You could talk about forestry practices, which, by the way, there's a ton of artificial selection happening there. You could talk about dog breeding. You could talk about cat breeding. You could talk about breeding horses. You could talk about how this is used in tomato farming. Anything. Any occasion where artificial selection is used. So you're going to pick one of those, and then keep in mind that the purpose of this is that you're going to demonstrate your knowledge of natural selection and artificial selection and explain the details of how artificial selection is used for your particular species. You still need a research doc, okay, point form research notes that you're going to use to create your presentation. Okay, so the research doc gets created while you're doing your research, and then you use your research doc to make your presentation. Okay. It's a video, so it's same thing we've been doing all the way along here. You're going to record yourself giving the presentation. You need a title slide. What is the industry or occasion that you've selected here for artificial selection? Name, course code. The next section is going to be about comparing artificial and natural selection. Tell me about which each of them is. What each of them is. Tell me, explain what evolution is in general, and what a selective pressure is. We're going to be talking about selective pressure, so some of this stuff is going to be gobbledygook to you right now because we haven't learned about it yet. But you're going to discuss what a selective pressure is in each of these two things. So what does evolution look like through natural selection? What does evolution look like through artificial selection? What are the selective pressures like in natural selection? What are the selective pressures like in artificial selection? Okay, or who does the selecting, in other words? Okay, and give me some examples for each of these. You can obviously use your own example, the one you've chosen for the project. It's one of the examples of artificial selection. Then, tell me a little bit about your industry or occasion where artificial selection was used. Why was it used? What were they attempting to do with artificial selection? What traits were being selected for or against in that particular industry? What was the process that was actually used to do the selecting? Like I just explained a process here used for wolves. They went out and they found the friendliest ones and they captured them and bred them. That's a process used for artificial selection. Or what's the process for tomatoes? Farmers go out at the end of the year and find the best, longest lasting tomato, juiciest, I don't know, and then collect them and use their seeds, or I don't know. Oftentimes, by the way, this isn't done at the level of the farmer, although farmers can do this. But I don't think there are a lot of farmers that are doing this, but you can. But there are a lot of companies that do this. That what they do is artificially select certain features in various crops and then raise those crops just for seed purposes. And then they sell the seeds. Like Monsanto would be an example of a company that does this. Now Monsanto does a lot of other stuff as well. Genetic engineering that is done with CRISPR technology and stuff like that, where they're cutting genes out of one organism and putting it into another organism and stuff. That's another type of genetic engineering. Although selective breeding, artificial selection, is also a form of genetic engineering. So anyway, but there are companies that do this. So you could look at that. Then you're going to talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of that process, artificial selection. So what advantages has artificial selection provided your industry? When I go to the grocery store, why is it better now due to artificial selection than it was previously? Are the tomatoes juicier? Do they last longer on the shelf? The answer to both of those questions is yes, by the way. But et cetera, what advantage has this provided? Is it more productivity? Is it better insect resistance? What is the advantage of using this process? Did it save money somewhere in the supply chain? Sometimes it makes fruits or vegetables last longer after they ripen. So again, that's a money-saving thing, so you don't lose part of your crop during the transport process, etc. And then talk about some disadvantages. So there are disadvantages to doing this. We've previously talked about what the advantage is of having genetic diversity in an organism, right? Going all the way back to the very first day, connecting everything together. Why is it advantageous to have diversity? Because when you do artificial selection, you remove genetic diversity from the population. In fact, that's what you're intentionally doing. You are making the population less diverse so that you can breed it for a specific trait. And I'll give you an example for dogs, and you can talk about this if you choose dogs. But for dogs, because they've been bred, I'm talking about purebred dogs specifically, they've lost a ton of their genetic diversity, and they have all kinds of health problems due to inbreeding. Heart problems, joint problems. So on average, purebred dogs live significantly shorter lives than mutts do. Mutts being just like a mix of different breeds. And that's because of a lack of genetic diversity. So anyway, you can talk about that. There are pitfalls to this in every industry. What are the potential disadvantages of using artificial selection. Okay, and then you got to have a works cited at the end. So that's the project. It is optional. I'll mention it again. So you don't have to do this project if you don't want to. But if your mark is not where you want it to be, and you're planning on putting a good amount of effort into this, then do it. And it'll probably boost your mark. What are you working on today? Oh, one last thing. I can't forget this. One last thing. Your homework portfolio. So you already handed in a homework portfolio for the first half. For those of you that didn't hand in the homework portfolio for the first half, that's why when you got your midterm report, it said no data for homework completion. Okay? That's how I indicate that on the midterm report. I have nothing to suggest that you've done any work outside the assignments. Nothing. There's no way for me to know that you've done anything. So my assumption is that you haven't. I mean, otherwise you would have handed something in. So, and again, that's a choice. So you need to hand it in. At the end of the course, you should hand in whatever you have for the remaining 3 units. So you should have a homework document for each unit. You guys know this already. You've been doing it already throughout the course. And you need to hand in those 3 homework documents with whatever you've got. They're not for marks, but I do use them to determine your learning skills on your final report card. You get an official final report card, a normal final report card. And for things like responsibility, independent work, I just put needs improvement because it does. I don't know what you've done. As far as I know, you've done nothing for independent work other than complete your assignments, which is not sufficient. For responsibility, you didn't complete it. So, and I also look, by the way, at whether or not you're handing in your assignments on time, or to be clear, handing them in with extensions that we've agreed upon. So if you're giving me a reasonable extension from an assignment deadline, and then you're meeting that deadline that you've agreed upon with me, then I don't count that against you. But if you're just handing things in late and not saying anything, or handing them in exceptionally late or not meeting your own deadlines, then that's problematic. And so I indicate that on your report card as well. So, I mean, these things should be obvious, but that stuff on the report card is often based on your homework portfolio. Okay, some people have been asking me about the marks on the homework portfolio because they've looked at the previous one. The actual numerical mark there doesn't appear anywhere. It's not really a mark. There's no way for me to mark something, like assess it on Brightspace without putting a number on it. It's silly, but that's how Brightspace works. They want a number for everything. So I don't look at that number though. I look at the actual rubric where it says like, yep, excellent for this one, good for this one, and I kind of just average it out. I usually round up. So, and I use that to determine what I'm going to put for your learning skills on your report card. So, just as a heads up, that's how it works. So, those are I guess there's 4 things technically that are due on the last day, but only 3 of them are required. The quiz, the vocabulary list, and the homework portfolio. You must complete and hand it in. The assignment is optional. No, you get comments. Yep. I'll write comments to the best of my ability. It's a little bit problematic here because I've never interacted with you really on a personal level, for the most part. Some of you guys I've spoken with in the Google Meet, but the vast majority of you I've never had a face-to-face conversation with. And so providing a detailed report card comment that is indicative of like my interactions with you is a little bit difficult. I'll do my best. I had to mostly base it on your assignments and the communications that we have had, but it's not as rigorous as it is in a typical semester where I actually get to know my students. Some of you I know from previous semesters, but to be perfectly honest, like there are many people in this class right now that I'm sorry, I don't know you at all. I wish I did. I know you from your assignments. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that I make them videos. The major assignments is that so I have some way to get to know you a little bit. What are you like when you're speaking? Like otherwise you're just like a name. I really don't even know you at all. And that honestly, as a teacher, I don't know how your other teachers feel about this situation, but this is a real bummer for me. One of the things that I like as part of my job is getting to know people. I like students. I like getting to know students, working with them, helping them improve. And I feel like that is like totally stymied by this way of communicating, this way of doing a course. It's a bummer. I'm really, really hoping that things are going to get back to more of a normal next year. I'm hoping that we're going to be on a rigorous vaccination schedule that gets moved up. Most high school students are eligible at this point for the vaccine, so I'm hoping things are going to get back to normal. We'll see. I don't know how exactly it will work, but this is not. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm sure that you don't either. So anyway, let's talk about what we've got to do today. Hopefully I answered your question, Jaleel, there. But yes, regular report card comments are coming. So today we're going to talk a little bit about, first of all, what is a theory? When you hear the word theory, when someone says, I have a theory about this, that is completely different to what a scientific theory is. When someone says, I have a theory, what that means in common language is, I have a guess. I have a guess about this. In science, that could not be further from what a theory is. A theory is something that is backed up by extensive body of evidence. It's where you have a guess, an educated guess as to how something works, and it is backed up by usually an exceptional level of evidence that all suggests that idea, that guess, is correct. And if you don't have the evidence to back it up, that's a conjecture. That's a guess in science. It's a possibility, but it's not a theory. A theory is something that has significant evidence. So when we talk about things like the theory of gravity or the theory of evolution, we're not talking about like somebody's guess. We're talking about something for which there is a huge body of evidence. And it's really important to note the difference between those things, because it's used to discredit stuff in science all the time. Evolution specifically. I realized that in this particular unit, there is a perceived conflict. And by the way, this is not just me that feels this. This is a real world conflict that tends to come up a lot, that there is some type of direct conflict between religion and science in the case of evolution. And I think that is invented. Me personally, I don't believe that there is any conflict between religious belief and the idea of evolution and the theory of evolution. The only place where you run into a conflict is where it's as if you subscribe to a religious belief that ascribes facts. For example, if you have a religious background that says the earth is 6,000 years old, that is ascribing a fact to a belief system. That's problematic because there is no geological or otherwise evidence to suggest that that's true. So you're kind of out on a limb there. I'm not telling anybody what to believe. Your belief systems are all totally up to you. However, the idea of descent with modification, the idea that the strongest in every generation, as dictated by the environmental conditions, is who gets to survive and reproduce, and over time that causes changes to populations in terms of their allelic frequency. That's a fact. We have observed that happening today in life. So there's really no debate about this. I mean, that part can't be debated. If you're looking at historical record, fossil record, I mean, again, we're going to look at some of this evidence together, but like it's there. The strata of rock are there. The various species found in the strata are there. You can go and see them. So, and there are certain amounts of time with these processes take in reality to happen. So if you have a factual belief that the Earth is 6,000 years old, that is directly contradicted by life, by the truth of the world around you. So, again, I'm not telling anybody what to believe, but I will say that the idea of descent with modification is completely compatible with every religious belief that I'm aware of. The Pope, firmly endorses the idea of evolution. And I'm only using the Pope as a particular religious leader here, but like, I really don't think that there's a major conflict here. But anyway, I will say that some people want to find a conflict here. I don't think one exists. If you want to talk about this in the Google Meet, come and chat with me about it. I'm happy to talk to you about it. But I will say that I don't think you need to sacrifice any of your personal belief systems in order to accept this as a valid explanation, which is what a theory is. It's an explanation that's backed up by evidence for how speciation occurs, for how species change over time. I mean, let me go back to the diversity unit where we talked about viruses. And we talked about when you use a certain antibiotic, you kill off all the bacteria, all the viruses. Bacteria, not viruses. Where you kill off, use an antibiotic, and you kill off all the bacteria that are easily killed, and the ones that survive are the resistant bacteria. Okay? And then when it regrows, the population is mostly resistant. That is the definition of evolution. A particular trait in the population is more common because of an environmental pressure that has been put on the population, which would be the antibiotic in that case. That is the textbook definition of evolution. You can literally do it in the lab today. You can go and evolve a bacteria. So to suggest that it doesn't exist or is not possible is nonsense. That doesn't make any sense. So I just want to throw that out there. So anyway, this video talks a little bit about the idea of what is a law in science and what is a theory. And that idea is important, especially if you're going to stay in academia, because what you're going to be contributing in academia is to theory or to law. So like that's what your job is as a scientist. So what does that mean? Okay, so this video goes through that a little bit. It's an excellent video. The second component of this, I've got a little video that talks about what is some of the evidence for evolution. I've mentioned a little bit of it just now, but what's out there? And this obviously doesn't go through the entire body of evidence. It's massive. Evolution plays a role in understanding every aspect of biology, from the tiniest thing, from molecular biology, all the way up to understanding systems biology and ecology and stuff like that. Evolution plays a role at every single level of biology. So, and it's integrated everywhere within biology. So there's really no modern study of biology that doesn't benefit from a better understanding of evolution. This video is not going to cover all of those connections, but it is going to talk a little bit about some of the bodies of evidence for evolution, which you should know about. This is just some general stuff. There's a short textbook reading, page 296 to 303. And while you're going through that, you should consider adding some words to your evolution vocabulary list. Before you do that, before you read the textbook chapter, I recommend these two videos for you. Okay, so this, I actually feel like I should change where this lesson is located in the unit to the beginning, or to the beginning of the semester, because what I'm going to ask you to do here, these videos are all about how to take good study notes. And this may be one of the most important skills that you learn in high school, especially if you're going to go on and do a professional school program like medicine specifically, or law, because you will have to be able to take effective notes from reading. In university, oftentimes what happens is you go to the lecture, you learn about the topic, and then they assign you a reading. And it's usually 2 chapters from the text, or 3 chapters from the text, or a book to read. And then you come back to your next lecture, and they expect that you read the 3 chapters, or the book, or whatever it is. If you're in an arts program, it's a little bit different, but in the science program, that's how it works in almost every course. There's a lot of reading you have to do. And it's overwhelming. It's so much reading, I can tell you. In a 1 semester course, you are basically supposed to read a textbook in every course. Sure, lots of people don't do it, but if you're looking to get, do really well and you're aiming for professional school, yeah, you got to do the readings. Of course, you have to know what's going on beyond what just what they talk about in the lectures. So in order to actually process that information, it's really important to know how to take good notes. And no one ever taught me this. It's really a shame that this has never came up in my life before I went to university. Basically, students just have to figure this out on the fly, and most people don't do a very good job. So the first video here is a really good video explaining how do you actually take notes. Now, this person is doing them by hand. Handwritten notes, by the way, are more effective. There's lots of research to show that they're more effective. However, very few students take handwritten notes these days. If you go to a university lecture, you're going to see most people with a laptop taking notes. That is just the status quo now, or an iPad or something. So, well, obviously, that strategy is going to be left up to you. This person is doing handwritten notes. However, most of the things in their explanation can apply to computerized notes as well. It's just not as effective. I'll leave it up to you. You do whatever you want. Take handwritten notes or take computerized. There is some research to suggest that handwritten notes are more effective. Lots of people in professional schools buy some type of tablet in order to basically get a hybrid of that, which is that you are doing a handwritten note, but you have an electronic version of it that you can annotate, erase, add pictures to, etc. So that would be my recommendation, but no, you don't. You don't need to submit these notes. They don't need to go in your on your question sheets, or on your question sheet or your question document for the last unit. These notes are for your study. They're for you. They will help you write the quiz at the end. But anyway, it's good practice. This may be, like I said, the most important skill you learn in high school. You will certainly use this no matter which program you take. So the first video is excellent. The second video provides a little bit more information on note taking, but I would say it's probably optional. You don't have to watch the second one here because it does repeat quite a bit of the information from the first video. It just adds a couple of extra stuff in there, which is also good information on note taking, but it's extra. So I'll leave it totally up to you if you want to watch the second video or not. Let me look. Okay, give me 2 seconds. When I'm done here, I'll go and I'll check the quiz out for you. Then you're going to create. So like I said, you should probably watch this video first before you read this textbook chapter 7.4. And I would suggest that you try and actually take a good note from this textbook chapter. Try it. Try out the skills that you just heard about in the video. About breaking stuff down into subheadings, synthesizing the information from the text and writing it in your own words in point form. I emphasize a lot of these skills in other places in this course as well, but synthesizing the information and writing stuff in your own words is really important. So rote writing, looking at a phrase from a textbook and just writing the same phrase in your notes is a big no-no in note-taking because it turns your brain off. It is the lowest brain function. It's brain stem function, basically, where you don't actually have to use any of the processing parts of your brain. And it doesn't really help you learn the material. Putting it into your own words, reading it and understanding it, taking a moment to understand it, and then put it into your own words in a document is much, much more valuable in terms of remembering content and understanding content. So anyway, that's what you should attempt. Try it. Okay, with textbook chapter 7.4. I don't ask you to do this a lot, but it certainly is a valuable skill. And then there are some questions from the text. 303, 2, 4, 6, and 7, they are about the evolution content. They go in that new evolution question document. And there's a little exit quiz. You can just test your skills. The second half, we're going to look at specifically natural selection. So I mentioned what it is in general. This is an excellent video that gives some great examples of natural selection. I used to do this as a note, and then I watched this video and I was like, this video is better than my note. It provides a lot of awesome examples and it really describes the process very well. So I switched and I said, hey, just watch this video instead. It's better than my note, and it's better than the chapter in the textbook on natural selection too, actually. And as part of the second half here, we are going to do a lab. It's an Explore Learning lab. I can just click on it real quick here. And you are basically going to do the process of natural selection in a what's this called? A simulation. Okay, you have a population of bugs, and in fact, actually, you know what? Why don't I actually look at it with you, so you can see what I will say that the document right here, where it says this document, it walks you through the lab step by step. Do this, do this, do this. What does this mean? Do this, do this, do this, and then asks you questions. Oops. But what is actually going on is a little bit cryptic. Why is this not having my password come up? There we go. Oh, no, not that one. That's for the last day. This is the one. Okay. You have a population of bugs, all right? And they live in a certain environment, and the environment is a particular color. Okay, you can see it there. It's green leaves in this case. What is going to happen here is a predator is going to come and pick off the most obvious of these organisms. Okay? In other words, the ones that stick out the most to the backdrop. That's a natural selective force. The bugs with the worst camouflage are going to be eaten the most because they stand out on their environment. Okay? So when you run the simulation, it's going to go through generation after generation of having a predator come and eat the most obvious bugs, and then have the remaining bugs breed with each other and make the next generation. Now remember that the genes, the alleles in the next generation, are going to be dictated by the previous generation. So if you remove, for example, all the pink bugs, then the next generation won't have any pink bugs in it, because those genes have been removed from the gene pool. Okay, they don't exist in the population any longer. In other words, a selective force has eliminated an allele from the population, and that happens in nature all the time. What happens in this example, and so if you were to do nothing, okay, if you were just to have a predator come, eat a few of these, they reproduce. Eat a few of these, they reproduce. Well, you might notice they're all the same color, okay? Every one of these bugs is the same color. And so every generation is going to be exactly the same color. So we are missing one important component that is necessary for evolution to occur. If there is no diversity, where does diversity come from? Where do we get new diversity in a population? Anybody know? Anyone want to take a guess? I don't even know how many people are still watching. It'd be funny if I checked and there was no one there. Let's see. Oh no, there's 28 people in here. It's not the whole class, but anyone have a guess? Where does new diversity come from? Where does a new trait come from? A new allele? Everyone in the population has brown hair, and one day somebody has red hair. That happened. Mutation. Exactly. It's a random change to DNA. And we talked about, way back when we did meiosis, we talked about how during that process you can have a random mutation occur. And mutation creates new traits. Sometimes those traits are terrible. They are not helpful for an organism's survival. And that will happen in this case. Sometimes a new trait will appear that will be hey, now my camouflage is bright orange. That's bad. That's the environment is going to select against that, and the predator is going to come and eat you. But sometimes a mutation is going to happen that is going to make you better camouflaged than you were previously, closer to the background, in which case that's going to increase your survival and you'll be less likely to be eaten by the predator. So this is just a simulation of that. Now you can change the mutation rate here. You can turn up the mutation rate. Oh, turn up the mutation rate. You can turn down the mutation rate. And that's part of what you're going to be changing as part of the lab. But keep in mind that all the mutation rate is that when there are the genes shown for the next level of the population, there will be some random new stuff in each one. And that's just due to a random change. In nature, this process is very, very slow. And they've obviously accelerated it here for the purpose of this simulation, just so that you can see it occurring. But in real life, the actual rate of mutation is very low. You will be doing that STEM case on the last day of the unit, Kim. It's actually a review of all of the stuff from the unit, because it has stuff from every day in it. So yes, we are going to do it, but it's on the last day. So anyway, that's the basics here. I can run a couple of generations so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so there we go. We've had some ones. Now the bird's going to pick off the ones that are the worst adapted. And then you'll notice, see in this next generation, they circle them for you, which is handy. There, a mutation has occurred. And if you look closely at that, you'll actually see that it's a slightly different color than the other bugs. And oftentimes, the mutations in nature are not particularly obvious. The traits are very subtle, but they will provide a subtle increase or decrease in the survivability or the fitness of a particular organism. So when we're talking about fitness, what we're actually talking about is the average ability to survive to the next generation. That's the fitness. Okay? All right, anyway, this lab is going to go through that process and then kind of walk you through an incidence of natural selection. After that, I have a brief little video here that gives a bunch more examples of natural selection happening in nature. What are some actual real-life examples where we have seen natural selection at work? Okay, it's pretty short, but there are a bunch of good examples in there. And instead of doing an exit quiz at the end of this one, there is a quiz underneath the gizmo. That's your exit quiz. So try that one instead. I looked at the questions underneath and I was like, this is exactly what I would ask in my exit quiz. So it's actually better if you just do that quiz, and it gives you results at the end as well. So if you have any questions about any of that stuff, again, I'll be here obviously, so just ask away. And if you do owe me anything, please make sure you're making arrangements with me and that you are meeting whatever deadlines that we're setting together. Okay? Please don't leave this to the end. Unfortunately, I have a higher number than average right now of students that are in a bad way. And I'm anticipating that there are going to be at least, out of my 2 classes, at least 10 people that aren't getting this credit at the end of the quad, which is a lot higher than last quad. I'm not sure what's happening. I think it's summer weather, and so people maybe are avoiding doing some of this work. But I really, really don't want any of those people to lose the credit. So please contact me if you're not in a good way right now with your assignments, and let's work out a schedule for you to get stuff done on time. All right, I'm gonna let you work. I'm gonna stop talking. Let me know if you need anything, but that's the basic layout. You just basically follow the instructions here step by step.